at this point in time, I would like us to go into our panel discussion. And our panel, I'll be there on the panel together with Steven. And also joining us is Dr. Gerald Nizeyimana, who is a Ugandan national and a veterinarian with a bachelor's degree of veterinary medicine from Makerere University, and also holds a master's degree in animal health from the Royal School of Veterinary Studies in the University of Edinburgh, with 10 years of uninterrupted service delivery in animal health and production. He has a lot of experience, having worked with civil society at the Uganda Meat Producers Cooperative Union up to the level of business development manager. And he is an assistant lecturer in the College of Veterinary Medicine, Animal Resources and Biosecurity, Makerere University, and currently a livestock specialist at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, where he is responsible for supporting and implementing the livestock sector interventions. He is currently the focal person of the Africa Sustainable Livestock 2050 project under the Emerging Pandemic Threats to program. So, Dr. Gerald, you're welcome on this panel. And I would like you to further break down this research that Steven has presented to us, and try to bring it more into perspective to address some of the questions that I think would be much more important at this point. Like, for example, to start with, what should we really be worried about as consumers of pork, consumers of these animal products? What should we be worried about as far as food safety is concerned?
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Steven, for the very excellent presentation that brings out very insightful information. And to dig deep on the question that Paul posed, if I'm to zoom in specifically on Uganda, you very well know that we have one of the fastest growing populations in Africa, and of course also in the world, where up to 75% are below 35 years of age, and the increasing ever urbanization, where a number of people are coming to town, and there's also an increased projection of the incomes of people, and you very well know that as incomes increase, people tend to demand for animal products. So there is quite a big demand for animal products in Uganda, and we need to be worried as a community, as consumers, that if the presentation that Steve has given, the results they are in are to go by, then we may not be very, very certain of the quality of the meat products that we consume. And to be very specific, pork is the next biggest consumed meat in Uganda, and maybe the biggest consumed in East Africa, if you were to go by statistics. Uganda consumes the highest amount of pork. And with this urbanization, like I said, a number of urban farms are coming up, and because they are near the market. And so if they cannot adhere to animal welfare standards, we risk not getting quality products on the market. And as you very well know, and I think Paul and Steve, you said it, that the welfare of an animal determines the end product. A poorly cared for animal, a poorly fed animal would have a very bad product on the market with very poor shelf life, and they cannot be stored for long. And with our cold chain systems in Africa, and maybe Uganda in particular, we risk losing, of course, the farmer losing income, but also losing the source of the animal protein. And maybe like halal, animal welfare should be an enabler to trade I've read a number of papers, a number of publications where people put a lot of emphasis on animal welfare in trade. And so if animals are not taken care of, you're sure diseases at the farm level have not been controlled, the animal has not been fed well, and so a potential trade limitation for animals that are not well taken care of. And so, Steve, to really expound on the worry, yes, we need to be extremely worried. And the Mukono and the Wakiso are about 30 kilometers from Kampala. These are peri-urban districts of Kampala, which is in the heart of Uganda. And if the peri-urban and urban people really are not very well aware about welfare, what do you expect of the so much percentage of Ugandans in the rural areas? So we need to be very worried. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gerald. Indeed, the threat to food safety is very evident. I really want to follow up on that. You know, we have majority of attendance coming from NGOs and some donor agencies that are supporting projects, humanitarian projects within within low and middle income countries. So I would like to, still ask you, Dr. Gerald, what could be the role of these NGOs or donor agencies in influencing this linkage that we are having between animal welfare and food safety?
Thank you, Paul. And as you are aware, NGOs have a very big muscle in as far as convening the populace is concerned, while delivering on their mandate in the developing countries. And I think, in my view, NGOs are a potential vehicle in as far as popularization of animal welfare is concerned. They have all the capacity working with their communities. And I know not all might be working direct in the livestock domain, but I think it's quite a very good experiment to compare human rights to animal welfare. And if we link the two, maybe the communities might appreciate faster. You're aware in most of our context, welfare for animals is still a new concept, but I think human rights are a bit advanced. So we might want to do a bit of comparison to see whether there is any, to see the relationship between the welfare of humans and also the animals. So the NGOs are a very, very big vehicle for championing the animal welfare measures and standards in livestock production. And maybe related, it's very, very important to note that they can support progressive improvements. We know adoption is always a very slow process. They can easily support progressive adoption of animal welfare measures, starting from mapped high-risk areas. And to me, the urban areas are the areas that, for small animals, including pigs and of course cattle, they are the ones where animal welfare measures and standards are always abused. So starting from urban areas, they can progressively support adoption of some of the animal welfare standards, in addition to supporting awareness creation through mass media and education, information, and dissemination materials. Over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gerald, for that response. Now, Steven, I would like to, to come to you on the same issue. I know Dr. Gerald might have mentioned a bit of this, but specifically, I want to point to your recommendation that national food safety plans need to incorporate animal welfare in there. So could you please highlight on what the potential role of NGOs or donor agencies could be in that particular context?
Yes, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Dr. Gerald, for the submissions. So NGOs actually and donor agencies really have important roles in how we can really go on to integrate animal welfare and into our national food safety plans. And a key thing actually is always to raise awareness and education, because we can't really want to solve something which is not evidently being seen in society. So NGOs can work really to raise this awareness about the importance of animal welfare and food safety, because it's what these actually policymakers and other people need always to see in a simple term how they can really do this. And also, of course, there has to be a clear track that much as sometimes the processes of having these guidelines and policies may be really slow, but people should go on to do a number of interventions, train these farmers at the farms and also point of slaughter. And also another thing is on advocacy and lobbying, like I showed you in that document. And if you read actually that whole document by the World Health Organization, you find that the private sector, which in some of these developing countries has a couple of good and efficient systems that had been done by them, they are not represented on these task forces and other bodies and all these different people that actually are doing these different activities and policies. So NGOs can advocate for their inclusion on these different bodies. When you look at the body, for example, that looked at the panel that looked at the World Health Organization Food Safety Plan for the next years, we find that there are few people on that panel who are actually experts that have derived their research strictly onto animal welfare. So such issues could be addressed, but of course, funding and support is also important for them as agencies to reach out to these funders, and be able to acquire these resources to help governments to build capacity for enforcing welfare standards and regulations. Above all these, of course, we need to monitor and evaluate that the impact of these interventions and these national food safety plans. If we go further as NGOs and monitor these plans and evaluate them, what has really been done, and feed this information to the government, it is a feedback that we can offer recommendations to them and be able to bring on board a couple of these partners using the evidence based of what this was a plan that was done by the government. We've monitored and evaluated it. This is how we supported. This is what was not done right. And in that way, there is a gap that is at least created between these different agencies. Over to you, Paul.
All right, thank you, Steven. As we conclude this panel session, I would like to get back to Gerald. Based on your experience, especially relating to private sector, where you have worked with these communities, what could you say in summary could be the way forward as far as achieving improvements in animal welfare for food safety?
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Steve, for again more light, for throwing more light on that. And Steve, maybe to conclude from my point of view is, and from the business point of view, I really would think that it's important that animal welfare standards are upheld in all production systems, and beginning with the at-risk, the high-risk value chains. And we are talking about piggery and also beef value chains. You've seen with transportation, poorly transported meat. We need to really intensify incorporation of animal welfare standards, and also the issue of awareness. Steve has mentioned it, and I said again, and I know from AWeCCA and also WTS, it's very, very important to scale down the messages that have already been created. I know you've done some baseline on the welfare standards in the country. We need to scale them down to the lower, to subnational levels. We need to move ahead and do business case demonstrations. When Steve says that stressed meat does not spend so much time, stressed meat is linked to zoonotic pathogens. Stressed meat is not good for consumers. We need to do some business case demonstration to determine how much is lost in terms of income by the private sector if they don't take care of the animals very well. And for sure, animal welfare and animal health are almost synonymous. Without animal welfare, you don't talk about animal health. And so business case demonstrations to look out for the benefits of animal welfare standards, how much more farmers lose, how much more private sector lose if the animals are not taken care of. And for sustainability reasons, a co-creation kind of process, which is really a much longer process where we jointly develop and co-plan some of these with the private sector, and these were saying the farmers, the value chain actors, show them these statistics, drawing from Africa, drawing from other studies, to also show them that you make loss when you cannot take care of these animals very well. When you transport badly, you cannot store this meat for so much time, and it changes color. And so it does not appetize, does not interest people to buy. So it's something to look at, business case demonstrations. And also lastly is to scale down, Paul, the welfare standards for Africa, to customize them to national government, to have them as part of the discussion, the agri-food systems transformation, having them as part of the discussion in the parish development model, which is now the economic engine and program for Uganda, as well as their agro-industrialization that the Minister of Agriculture is emphasizing on to promote commercialization of agriculture in Uganda. That is a very strong pillar within the National Development Plan. So in summary, there is a lot more to do to show the communities, show the private sector, show national governments that without animal welfare, you cannot talk about agro-industrialization, you cannot talk about food safety, you cannot talk about trade and export, you can talk about all that is related to do with improving revenues from livestock sector. Thank you, Paul. And I think to tie that would be to the question that Zachary raised, specificities of animal welfare and health. I know there's time for questions, but I could just use this 30 seconds. Zachary, animal health and welfare are synonymously used. Without animal welfare, you not talk about animal health. So animal health interventions such as prophylactic medication, support to prophylaxis, support to animal transport, proper transportation and methods, design of proper housing, design of a suite of prophylactic packages to animals are some of the activities that NGOs could take note of, could begin on, among others that can easily be elaborated. I hope in the Q&A I'll make a detailed answer to this. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gerald. You have actually taken us to our next session, which is the Q&A. And I'm sure now our participants are really ready to have some comments, some questions, and I would invite Carol to tell us how this is going to be done, and then we can move on.
Yes, thank you to the panelists for this interesting discussion already. As I already posted in the chat, in case anyone has not seen the chat, it's like at the bottom of your screen. It should pop up, and then just click on the chat and just type in a message. It should say that the message is going to all, then we can all see it here. And some people have already done this. Gerald, you've already got back to one of the questions from Zachary, but we have some more questions. And one is really simple, really clear question. What is the best housing for pigs? I think it's when we talk about what could be the direct recommendations to people who work with small scale farmers, what could they take away from this session?
All right, so
feel free, who wants to answer?
Okay, Steven, would you want to take that? I know you've moved to different communities and seen a lot going on. Would you want to first attempt to that?
Yes, I think the key thing looking at housing these pigs, the issues that we found is the number of regulations that, of course, one needs to look at and factors. But of course, the size is important because pigs really need enough space to move quite around, because they are really a species that is so exploratory and does a lot of work in their houses. So you find that a number of these farms really there's not enough space for even these pigs to stand or even lie down or move around. So space requirements really will vary depending on the pig's age, size, and also the weight. Then regarding another key thing is the ventilation. So ventilation is important to maintain also a healthy environment. It is interesting that I haven't shown you a picture, but there's a farm that was raising these pigs in much more of, it's more like a classroom. So this was a farmer who was, this person had a school, and due to the impact of COVID-19, he goes on to convert this school into a farm. So he gets a full class and it's all sealed off, and then he has all these different pigs inside there. So ventilation is really important because moisture and ammonia and other harmful gases can really cause a number of respiratory problems for these pigs and also their caretakers. Then also temperature is important because this is a species which is also very sensitive to temperature. So it needs to be kept in quite a comfortable temperature range, and you'll have to provide adequate insulation and probably heating or cooling systems to maintain this temperature for this animal. On the farms that we visited, the number of them use floors that are actually made of concrete, but this is actually a risk factor for some of the foot and leg problems for pigs. So you'll even clearly see, interestingly, I think 2 weeks back, I was watching a documentary of a clinical trial on African swine fever vaccine. And it was interesting that the pigs that were being used in this trial actually were left to mimic their normal behaviors. So you could clearly see them, the floor was actually much more soil, and these people sterilized this soil very well. And before putting it in these houses, they made sure that it was free of all these parasites, and once in a while they were disinfecting and all that. And the pit was interesting that it was digging all these holes, and it can't even have the perception that it is being used for research, because ideally the environment is so durable and nice for it. Then, of course, there are feed and water systems that people have tried to put into these houses. And in one picture, we see a very protruding nozzle of the tap that was ideally actually causing harm for these pigs. So as much as there is automatic feeding and water systems, you find that as they have been put in the housing itself, they are actually impacting on causing trauma to these pigs. Some actually cannot be accessed, some are a bit high. So these issues should also be considered, but at most the biosecurity is important for these pigs at the point of you designing these houses. So the guidelines are limitless, but I could touch on some of those points for pigs to really have a safe, healthy, and comfortable environment for efficient production. Over to you, Paul.
Yes, maybe I can just add another question that connects to this one, which was asking if there's any manual on wealth and health for like pigs, but also cows, goats, and poultry, which can help small-scale farmers. Is there maybe any documents that you could recommend, or
So if I can start off with responding to that, in Steven's presentations, there were some. He referred to the terrestrial animal health fund, which has animal welfare quite described there. So from that, you can pick out some of the general aspects that would apply to the different species. However, a challenge I have observed, especially in my interactions with farmers, is that some of these cannot be used as they are. And within their countries, there are no those specific guidelines on how animals need to be taken care of. We are working with under WTS program on Animal Welfare Development Corporation. We are coming up with very specific guidelines on how to take care of these different species, looking at fish, at bees, at cattle, pigs. So this will go a long way in helping on this. But however, in the meantime, that could be a potential reference. I don't know what my colleagues would want to say.
Maybe I could add one point to what you've said, Paul. Indeed, there is need to customize a little bit the OIE terrestrial manual to the developing countries' situation and the contexts, and the work you're doing is very, very spot on. And maybe in this you could think of basic prerequisites for animal welfare. And like I said, progressive improvement is always the way to go. We begin with prerequisites, then we go to standards, and then for the different scales of livestock production, zero grazing, intensive, and as well as extensive. That would be a very good way to move. Thank you.
Carol, do we still have more time?
Yes, I'm just following up because there's a lot coming in right now.
Okay.
There's, for example, a question, quite a concrete question again. How is the situation in Uganda in regards to use of chicken pop as feeds? This is from a question from Kenya. Here in Kenya, some farmers use chicken pop as feed for cattle, and you find that the quality of milk and meat is greatly compromised. Is that also an issue in Uganda?
Wow.
Steven, Steven, would you want to respond to
that? Yes, in Uganda, the couple, and this is what we talked about, that as we are in the era for the demand for poultry, I mean for meat and other products, people are going to become so desperate, and they will go into a couple of practices that have been whistleblown to be actually nice to improve production. So the use of chicken poop as actually feeds for cattle is even done so much in Uganda, and even in pigs actually it's done so much. So some people have the notion that chicken manure could contain some nutrients that can be beneficial to plants, or it can be beneficial, even a source of nutrition to animals. So the issue is that cattle actually have specific dietary requirements that should be done, but I don't know why they could go on to actually doing some of those practices. So it is quite common that people will do that because for pigs, because they are known to actually eat a wide range of all these things, whatever they are given. So you find that a farmer who's actually struggling and he has no money, it is interesting that the farmer is willing to buy a sack of manure and then he feeds it to pigs because he knows it is at a very lower price, and than going to buy 50 kilograms of maybe maize bran or any food for pigs. So there are a number of social, economic dynamics that need to be looked at, because the moment issues become hard for them, and then they hear of it is a cheap alternative, and but the key thing we should ask them really, does it yield results, like at a point where they're using this chicken manure. But it's important that these manure may contain pathogens, and I could buy it from one farm and then take it to another farm, a farm that has been a hub of a number of diseases, and that actually is a poor biosecurity practice for them, that the pathogens such as Salmonella and E. coli in chicken can actually cause illnesses in cattle and humans. So if they are present in the manure, there have to be actually strict guidelines and recommendations on manure use, and also these different things that people are giving to animals to be able to meet their demand and break even out of business. Over to you, Paul.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to say, like, this is was the last question we have time for, had time for now. So we collect all of the questions and the speakers will get back to you via email afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I see a hand from Dr. Gerald. However, I just want to note that we are out of time. Could you use a few seconds to make your point?
I was clapping for Carol for being efficient on time, and the very interesting questions from colleagues, especially the linkage between the universities and the communities, the linkage between animal welfare and humanitarian programs. I think those are questions that we can reply separately. They're very, very important questions going forward. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I would like to thank you, our panelists, Dr. Gerald Nizeyimana and Steven. Thank you so much for your input and drawing a lot of light around this very, very important topic of animal welfare and food safety. I would